Now, I admit I was empathetic to Lokai's mission. Being black in America solidified my position.
Mm.
But leave it to Star Trek to make us all see how ridiculously destructive hate can be.
Perhaps I could use this as an excuse to go to those far-off planets with little polka-dotted people if necessary, and be able to talk about love, war, nature, God, sex, all those things that go to make up the excitement of the human condition.
I'm Captain James Kirk.
Spock.
Your move, Captain. Jim Kirk of the Enterprise.
What's going on?
I'm James Kirk. These people are my friends and my shipmates. Leave my crew alone.
Out of the question.
How about that?
James Kirk.
It fits like a glove, Captain.
Oh, the bonehead ideas.
Gentlemen, I'm Captain James Kirk. Get out of my chair. Get out of it now.
My greetings and felicitations, Captain. So good of you and your officers to, drop in. Absolutely smashing.
Get in, loser. We're going Star Trekking.
I love it.
And welcome to Humanist Trek. It's a comedy podcast about the humanism in Star Trek. I'm Sarah Ray.
And I'm Allie Ashmead.
Hey, this episode marks the final 10 episodes in our original series run.
Wow.
We're almost done.
It's only taken a year and a half. And I don't know. I'm going to miss Kirk and Spock and McCoy.
No, you're not, because we're going to do the animated series next, and you'll get some more of them. I have been working on my notes for what is probably going to be our next Patreon special, the Futurama episode, which is just like a hat on a hat on a hat on a hat on a hat of Star Trek inside references and shit. And so it's like, it's a Star Trek episode in a Star Trek episode inside a Star Trek episode inside another Star Trek episode. And there's so many Easter eggs and references. Then I was like, oh, that's from the episode where they... Oh, fuck, what episode was that? My brain just goes dead.
So I've never watched Futurama. Like, I know of it from just pop culture references, but I have never sat down and watched an episode. And I did watch it. Like, I didn't know who the fuck anybody was, but I did watch it. And I did see the cloud. Oh, what episode was that from?
Yeah, exactly.
That struck lightning. And I'm like, yeah, this is good. This will be fun.
So also today, the day that this episode releases, is the day that you set sail on the Star Trek cruise.
Woohoo!
And I thought it might be fun.
Across the Atlantic Ocean.
I thought it might be fun to make some predictions. What do you think is going to happen on the Star Trek cruise? Like what?
I have no idea. Make some predictions. Well, I think there's going to be probably some fucking.
Oh, yeah.
Not necessarily by me, but other people.
Somebody posted in, I want to say it was the Star Trek shit posting Facebook group. And let me see if I can find it because I replied to it. Grace made a post in the Star Trek shit posting group that said, going on the Star Trek cruise, looking for some fun poster ideas to print and put on our cabin door for a chuckle. Attached a few inspiration ideas. I know this grump has poster memes galore in Eve's. Help a comrade out, please. And so it's, one of them is the one with Worf with the hair and it says L'Oreal because you're Worf it.
Yeah.
Another one is more like Enterprise era. It's a comic where there's like two officers shaking hands and it says, remember, you may be talking to a Romulan. And the one guy has like this evil shadow behind him. But the one that I like the most was also like a vintage time period poster looking thing too that says, where no man has gone before, think again. And it's a picture of an Orion woman and a red shirt standing there. Look, she's up on a stage, right? And the red shirt, Scotty, I assume, is making eyes at her. And it says, while on shore leave, stay safe. A public service announcement from the Starfleet Medical Bureau of Communicable Diseases.
Yeah.
So I said, I like that one. That was my favorite. I said, I like this one, especially with all the pineapples on board. Oh. Maybe add a pineapple to the graphic. Although that might send signals you don't want to send. I don't know.
Well, that's okay because, it's a known thing. Pineapples, it's a known thing, so it's fine.
Did you get yourself a Horgon yet?
No,
You're not going to seek
late.
Jamaharon?
I wonder if I could get that from Amazon. Is it too late? I wonder if I could get a little.
Is there a Star Trek merch store on the ship? Can you buy merch?
Super expensive, and
that makes sense.
It's like T-shirts and stuff, and it's super expensive. I think there's going to be a lot of Jamaharon going on.
I think you're right
because we are doing a Return to Ryza as one of the theme nights. We did not do that last year, so
I bet you're going to see a lot of Horgons that night.
Yeah,
just because that's the Ryzen prop too. Like whether you're genuinely signaling to the universe that you would like some sweet Jamaharon or not.
And I'm going to be wearing like pretty revealing bathing suit sort of thing. So yeah.
Okay, so my prediction for your Star Trek cruise is that you're going to bump into a craft that has been stolen from a port nearby. And on that craft, you're going to find an individual who's half black and half white. And that sets off a whole adventure.
I would love it if someone did do that as cosplay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that would be so cool to, paint your face half black and half white.
Well, let's talk about it on this week's episode of Star Trek, the original series, Season 3, Episode 15, Let That Be Your Last Battlefield.
Sir, contact with an object. It's moving toward us. No visual contact yet.
Deflectors, full intensity.
Mr. Sulu, yes, Captain. Anything on your scanners?
It's coming at light speed.
Collision course. Visual contact.
Anything, over?
All wavelengths dominated by ionization effects, sir.
All engines full stop.
Did you want to call this planet Arianus?
Yes.
The whole time?
Because in my Google Doc, Arianus keep underlining it, saying it's misspelled. And so it just kept calling it out. I'm like, that kind of looks like anus.
So that's the name of this week's planet, Arianus. And it's been attacked by a bacterial invasion. The only hope to save it and its people is McCoy and the Enterprise. Okay.
That's awful. So this time they're on a humanitarian mission to go help this planet. And they're supposed to decontaminate it somehow, like crop dust it from orbit.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's what they're supposed to do. And they're going along, and suddenly their sensors indicate a space shuttle ahead. To their surprise, it's a Starfleet space shuttle, or shuttlecraft rather. And Sulu says it's the same shuttle that was reported stolen from Starbase 4 2 weeks ago.
How does a shuttle get away from the starbase?
It can't.
Are there not other ships that could catch it?
Yeah.
At the starbase?
Yeah, you could track it.
And Sulu was like, oh, it looks like the one stolen from the starbase. As if all these shuttles don't look exactly the same.
Yeah.
Other than like the print on the front, how would you tell one from another?
Uhura reaches out to try to contact them, but no response. And Spock ascertains that it's been damaged and that there's one humanoid life on board, but it's either injured or it's ill.
Rather than beam this individual aboard, they tractor the shuttle into the hangar deck?
Well, it's their property. They want the shuttle.
That's fair.
But yeah, they could have.
So Kirk and Spock head down to the hangar deck and meet up with some UC red shirts outside the door. And once the hangar repressurizes, the doors open. But before they can even go inside, this man whose face is half black and half white comes stumbling through the doors and collapses onto the ground in front of them.
They look visibly shocked to see someone who looks like that.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you were going to say something about how the shuttle came in.
This was a good, I liked this deal.
Cool effects, bro. I mean.
Do you think that was remastered or was that the original stuff? Was it remastered?
So the original footage, though, had NCC 1701 / whatever on the shuttle pod. And they reused the Galileo footage. So that's why it had the Enterprise number on it.
So they went back in the remastering and changed it to Starbase 4
Starbase
or 2 or
4,
whatever it was,
and the name of it was like Da Vinci or something.
I'll be damned.
Yeah. I think that was the actual footage of it, though, of it coming into the shuttle bay and all that stuff.
Back then, they were using guide wires to move these models around. They had it up on strings. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they've got this guy in sick bay now, and he's wearing this gray cat suit with gloves And I mean, this guy was smuggling sausage out of the factory.
Yes.
Rocking big nuck.
Look, and I always look at the package and I can't help it. And it's like, sometimes I think, what do guys go through? Like, but it's got to be the same as when you have boobs. Like, they're just there and you don't pay any attention to them. So,
yeah.
But it's just weird to see so much stuff.
Sausage. Yeah, so much sausage.
Yeah.
McCoy's giving him a hypo of something, and KSM have a conversation about how this half black, half white thing is almost genetically impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Spock and McCoy concur that this must be a mutation, one of a kind.
Yeah, because he says something about there's a study of nucleotides and that the gradation from black to brown to yellow to white are typically genetically predictable. So you don't get a freaking straight line of one color to another.
McCoy says he's never worked on anything like him before, because of course he hasn't. And Spock's like, well, yeah, but you're still pumping him full of that noxious potion you call medicine.
As if he was human.
Yeah.
Sick burn.
Doctor, might I suggest a cream for that sick burn?
I love it.
McCoy's like, well, the organs are mostly the same. I mean, they're not in the same place. And there's a couple of extra ones. But look, guys, you know I'm not a very good doctor. So Spock heads off to do some research.
The patient starts to come around, and it's like we needed Nurse Chapel to tell us, oh, he's coming around. Thanks, Nurse Chapel.
So this alien's name is Lokai, played by Lou Antonio, who had like a few onesie-twosie appearances here and there. But you've probably seen a lot of his work and didn't even know it because he got into directing pretty early in his career.
Oh, yeah?
And he directed some episodes of Picket Fences, Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Vaguely remember Picket Fences.
Spy Game, American Gothic, Dawson's Creek, which I hated.
Never watched it.
Party of Five.
I did watch that.
The West Wing, CSI, Numbers, Boston Legal.
CSI.
He's directed a lot of like well-known stuff. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad he found his spot in the industry.
Yeah.
Because, some of those shows are pretty stellar.
I also have some medical questions.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of sausage, do you think his dick is half black and half white too, or is it just the face? Like, is it a whole body head to toe thing?
Oh, I didn't even think about that. I do know that they covered up their hands because they didn't want to do the makeup.
Right.
But maybe, it makes sense.
That leads me to believe that it's the whole body split down the middle.
Of course. I mean, it makes sense. One white ball, one black ball.
Right? It's like the popsicle that's two flavors together, you know?
Yum. Anyway, oh God, thanks for that.
That's what I bring to the show.
Yeah. Hey, it's important.
So the dude starts to come around. They do introductions, and Kirk accuses him of stealing a shuttle.
So Kirk says, you're on the Starship Enterprise. And he's like, I've heard of that. That's from the United Fleet of Planets, right? And Kirk corrects him and says, that's the Federation, motherfucker. Anyway, Lokai says that his need gave him the right to use the ship, an emphasis on the word use, which I guess maybe he was planning to return it.
Right.
He's from a part of the galaxy that's way the fuck out there. Like, the name of the planet is called Charon. Apparently, it's uncharted.
I have a stellar cartography question.
Okay.
So, Lokai says he's from Charon, and Kirk's like, what? That's in the southernmost part of the galaxy.
How is there a south?
How is there a south? Is there north and south in space cartography? And then he's like, it's in an uncharted quarter. It's uncharted to you, but not to this guy.
Well, I mean, they are Team America, Team yes. Police America. So
yes, we are the colonizers.
If it isn't uncharted to us, then it don't matter, I guess.
Right.
I don't know.
Anyway, Kirk's throwing question after question at him. Where are you from? Why did you steal that ship? What were you going to do with it? And Lokai's had about enough of their questions. So he's like, I'm not going to answer any more questions until I speak to my court-appointed attorney.
He's like, you white people, I mean, you monotone people are all alike.
Yes.
I thought it was interesting, though, because obviously in his culture, that tells us a lot already about his culture is like, you monotone people are all alike. So there's obviously some issue with skin color.
Right. And this is a criticism that Star Trek gets, whether fairly or not. This, all aliens are a monolith, right? The Romulans are all devious, and the Klingons are all warriors, and the Ferengi are all this. Like, Star Trek gets a lot of criticism for doing that. And so here we are, right back to the beginning.
Yeah.
You monotone humans, you're all the same.
Like, monotone, whoever thought that was going to be an insult?
Right? Kirk calls Uhura, notify the starbase we've recovered their shuttle and its driver, and we'll return them both as soon as we get done with this mission to Arianus. They have a quick discussion about this guy being the result of genetic mutation again, and that's the best hypothesis they have to work with for now.
Right.
Chekhov calls down, now there's another alien vessel, so it's back to the bridge. And on the bridge, they've got sensor readings, but when they put the ship on screen, there's nothing there. So they rule out Romulan cloaking device and somehow then determine that it's a small scout ship, maybe 1 or 2 person crew. It's not answering hails, and they can't identify any propulsion systems or weapons. So they try to do some evasive maneuvers, but the ship matches their moves. And now it's on a collision course. Brace for impact!
Brace, brace, brace!
Oh, can we talk about the cheesy zoom in, zoom out effect they did on this fucking flashy light?
Oh, yeah, on the red alert?
Yes, it was so stupid.
It was, it was weird. It was like, woo, like,
woo, woo, woo. Like
yeah.
a zoom in, zoom out, zoom, like real fast. Yeah, it was awful.
That was new.
It reminded me of so back in the day, with the big camcorder video cameras that we had, I remember the zoom being like super slow. When you'd push it to zoom in, it would like slowly zoom.
Yeah.
But I think later devices, it wasn't that way. It did that sort of effect. It just reminded me of like a really old home video.
I mean, it was
like my friends and I got together and we were making a Star Trek episode. Yeah. And I had some friends, we actually did do that.
Oh, I want to see it.
I'm the biggest nerd.
I want to see the video.
I don't know that it exists anymore.
Oh, bummer. So they're bracing for a collision and nothing happens. Spock says, well, it's gone. It just disintegrated. Fascinating. But they seem to have gained one more life form on board. And Kirk's like, where? And lo and behold, the dude's on the bridge. And his name is Beale, but every time I look at it, I want to say Bele because it's spelled B-E-L-E.
I wrote it in my notes as B-E-E-L so that I would pronounce it correctly as we do this show.
His name is Beale, and guess what? He's white on the left and black on the right, so he is the exact opposite of Lokai.
But nothing is made of that yet, right? You're just, as an audience, you're just left to kind of figure that out on your own if you can.
Right.
I would imagine that was lost on a lot of people until the big reveal later, This is Beale, played by Frank Gorshin, whose IMDb page is just like Buckshot, just hit a bunch of different things.
Oh.
He did classic stuff back in the day, but more recently, some movies, nothing real blockbuster unless you count Beethoven's Third, the movie about the dog, Beethoven.
Oh, no. I mean,
none of them were very good. He did soaps, voiceover for animated series and video games. And here's a weird 6 Degrees Star Trek connection.
Mm-hmm.
Frank Gorshin was the creator of the 1995 original movie 12 Monkeys.
Really?
Which inspired the 2015 TV series 12 Monkeys.
Terry Matalas.
Brought us Terry Matalas.
Oh, my gosh.
Right?
That's so cool.
Beale is also wearing a gray jumpsuit, exposing a lot of nuck.
Yeah. It's the Battle of the Nuck.
The Battle of the Bulge. The Battle of the Bulges. How do I make that into a t-shirt?
I know.
Oh.
I'm sure. Oh, yeah, we can think of something.
Oh, yeah.
And if you've tuned in expecting philosophical, real deep stuff, no, we're talking about packages.
Yes. So Beale's like, I'm here for Lokai, obviously. Give him to me. And Kirk's like, whoa, buddy. In these United Planets, even a former president with multiple criminal convictions in 4 indictments gets a little due process before Colorado's allowed to kick him off the ballot.
Damn it. Yeah.
Our Supreme Court terrifies me. We learn that Beale is chief officer of the Commission on Political Traitors. Speaking of our Supreme Court. And speaking of political traitors, Lokai was tried and convicted of treason, but he escaped.
He's been a bad boy. So Kirk says, he's in sick bay. We'll take you to him. But remember, basically behave your fucking self because you're on my ship.
So they go down to sick bay, and this episode goes from like ankle deep to the deep end in a snap. And as Beale and Lokai start quoting the diaries of Jim Crow at each other or something, Lokai calls them murdering oppressors, says he raided our homes, tore us from our families, herded us together like cattle, and sold us as slaves.
Yep. We're straight from the rule book of America. And I, for one, appreciated this whole conversation and the way that they shot it, because it was the two of them talking, and it was like no one else was in the room. Even though Kirk was standing right there, they zeroed in on the two of them having this back and forth. Well, you did this, and you did this, and you made us slaves. And he's like, but we loved you, and we took care of you. And then, but you call that being taken care of. We didn't have any rights, and it was back and forth. And it was perfectly done.
Yes. And just still so shocking that they were able to get away with the quote we use, the Gene Roddenberry quote about, if it's little green men on a faraway planet or purple polka dotted men on a faraway planet or whatever, you can get away with it. Yeah. And this was like real close to the nose.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yes.
Because it was so in your face, but still being done by aliens. So they weren't
distant
coming
enough.
out. Yeah. And I loved every second of this conversation.
I mean, all the language, it just hits right on they don't mince words.
No.
Right? Lokai says, educated. They said, oh, we educated you. And Lokai says, educated us enough to serve the master race.
Exactly. Oh. That was not just slavery, but that was Nazi Germany as well.
Yeah. Beale tries to say that what Lokai wants is a utopia in a day, but it doesn't work like that. It takes time. And Lokai's like, the only utopia you'd ever want is one where we're genocided.
Right.
I can't believe they got away with this.
And then Beale, who has been so sort of like trying to smooth talk, he snaps and he shows his true side, and they both jump at each other, and he calls him, you filthy little plotter of ruin. That just basically negated everything he said. That we were trying to do this, but that to me shows his true colors of how he really feels about that person who's just a different color on the other side of his body.
Right. So it's made very clear what period of U.S. history we're in this week. Students, if you'd open your textbooks, both sides still entrenched in hatred. Definitely not a peaceful time for all of the people of Sharon, I think. And here's the Enterprise now in the middle of their dispute. But Kirk makes it clear, you're not Federation members, and there's no precedent for extradition, so I'm not going to take sides, and I'm not going to take you back to Sharon either. You're going to go to the starbase because you're in my space, bitch.
Right.
And you have crimes to answer for.
Yeah, you stole our shuttle, goddammit. And before we do that, we still have to go to the other planet.
We have lives to save, man, because that's kind of what we do on this show.
Sometimes.
Whether they want it or not.
Yeah, or whatever.
Yeah.
But so, they've got to go to Arianis first. And so that takes precedent over anything.
So Kirk sends Beale off to guest quarters and leaves Lokai to rest in sickbay. And he rushes back to the bridge because Chekhov calls down to say that they're suddenly off course and the controls are out. On the bridge, nobody's got any answers. Scotty's in engineering and he can't find malfunctions. They switch to auxiliary control, still no change. So Scotty's going to come up to the bridge. Meanwhile, Chekhov reports they're at Warp 8, heading straight for the coal sack. Is that another Russianism? Is that like a legit Russianism? Yeah.
I don't know.
Heading for the coal sack? I don't know what that means.
Where is that?
Heading for collision, heading for certain doom, heading for death. I wonder if ChatGPT knows. In Russia, the term coal sack typically refers to the coal sack nebula, also known as the Dark Doodad Nebula or Dark Nebula, which is a prominent dark nebula located in the constellation Crux, the Southern Cross, in the Southern Hemisphere. The name coal sack comes from its appearance as a dark patch in the Milky Way, resembling a sack of coal against the brighter backdrop of the stars. However, in this fictional scenario, it's used metaphorically to describe a potentially dangerous situation, implying that they are heading towards something dark and ominous. It's a way of adding tension and drama to the scene by using a recognizable astronomical reference that I've never heard of.
ChatGPT.
Right?
That's amazing.
The robots are taking over, Allie.
I love it.
Red alert, and they do that stupid Zoom thing
back
again.
in and out, like, you're...
Like, huh?
Like, yeah, basically. The camera's going up and in and out really quickly. Meanwhile, nobody notices that Beale is on the bridge with them because, their security is so lax. And
anybody goes on the bridge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they can't identify where the malfunction is coming from. But nevertheless, it's there and it's out of their control.
So Beale bursts onto the bridge and announces his hostile takeover. Says he's been chasing Lokai for 50,000 Earth years. How he's done that conversion.
He did say that, didn't he?
Yeah. He said not Earth. He said Terran years or something like that. Scotty reports that they're traveling at warp 10 and increasing, which I didn't think we could do, but I know we've done once before at least.
Look, everyone, anytime someone takes over the ship, it always makes them go faster than they're capable of, but they can't seem to do that voluntarily, press the button and say, we're going to go warp 10.
Right. Aren't they into transwarp at this point? Oh, there's a great thing going on in the shitposting group about warp versus transwarp.
Okay.
Somebody took an image of the Enterprise in flight in warp with the stars flying by.
And the trans
flag and they changed
colors.
it back to the trans flag.
I love it. That's fast.
And then there's a bi-warp drive and an ace warp drive. And they've done all the different flags. I absolutely love it.
Nice. So they're going to warp 10 or something.
No, and none of them turn into, God damn it, what were the little salamander people that Janeway and Paris turned into when they went faster than warp 10 and they had babies? Do you remember that? You're the Voyager fan, not me.
That sounds familiar. But Jesus Christ.
I don't know how I'm going to enter this into the log. I look forward to reading it.
That's what happens when you go too fast. So now Lokai bursts onto the bridge, and Lokai pleads with Kirk to protect him, to come to the aid and defense of the oppressed. And I thought this was a really great way to reflect racism off the shiny sci-fi screen back to us.
And also, what happens when someone who is oppressed asks for help?
Yeah.
And then the person that's being asked for the help, what do they do?
Yes.
Do they intervene? Do they take sides? Do they... It's a really nice way to show this.
Yeah. Kirk orders them both taken to the brig, but apparently they have a kind of body shield force field thing that's never really explained.
I know.
But okay.
Well, so first, apparently they're telepathic because Lokai is controlling the ship.
From his head.
His head.
Right.
I mean, then they can't even do anything. They can't shoot him. They try to touch him. The security bounces off. And they're just like, okay, shoot him. On the bridge, get out the phasers. That doesn't work because they have a personal shield. And then Bill says, you're helpless. You are at our mercy. You're going to go where I want you to go.
Kirk's concern here is obviously for the people of Arianas who will die without their help.
Mm-hmm.
So he pulls the old self-destruct bluff. Is this the first time we've seen this or the second?
No, it's the second or third at least.
Okay.
In the series so far.
I couldn't remember.
One was the Corbomite maneuver, wasn't it?
Oh, it might have been. I don't remember.
I know. What strain do you have today? Good God.
It's one that you bought me.
Good Lord.
It's I don't know, one of the ones that you got me for Christmas.
Anyway, Sulu and Chekhov kind of exchange a look when Kirk says he's going to blow up the ship.
So Kirk gives the computer the destruct sequence. Spock gives his code, then Scotty. And there's a ton of effort trying to create drama and tension here.
Oh my, I was quickly losing the will to live. This self-destruct setup took so much time.
You know, there is in comedy the idea that, and I think Family Guy is probably the first like pop culture experience of this that I can think of, where the joke is funny. And then there's a period where it's like overused and not funny. But if you keep pushing past that, it becomes funny again, right? And that Family Guy does that thing very well, where they just take a joke too far, twice too far, and then it works again. And I feel like this, building this drama to the thing, I feel like it was in that dead area in the middle where it wasn't effective anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this was a joke.
Whether it needed more or less, I don't know.
It was too long. It was... Every time Kirk would say, "Computer, do this," and it would be 10 seconds of computing, and then, and I get maybe it's before 286, long before that time, you know, long before the 80s.
Yes.
I get things take longer, but good God, if it was Picard and Riker, all they need to do was a key. They turn it, they say their shit, and they're done.
I want to say Picard and Riker did one of these too. I can't wait till we get there.
It wasn't that long though.
No,
they have a key, they turn it, and then they enter their Alpha, Bravo, whatever code, and then it's done. This took too long.
It took as long as we just talked about it.
Right?
And then the final code is given, and it starts a 30-second countdown timer, and that's the cliffhanger to commercial.
So Kirk is really, really cashing in on this bluff. So they've got 30 seconds, and he's like, okay, let's see you prevent the computer from fulfilling my commands. Which, I mean, he's telepathic, so I'm surprised he couldn't.
I have a Star Trek nerd quibble with this.
Okay.
So he says once the countdown gets to 5, nothing can stop it.
I know what you're going to say.
But then...
I know what you're going to say.
They're doing the countdown, and they get to 6, and Beale's like, okay, fine, do it. And Kirk... It takes another 10 seconds.
I know. They would have blown up already. Because by the time he says computer, and then he pauses.
Yeah.
It's 3 seconds have passed.
Christ.
Then he says abort whatever.
Yeah.
And she hasn't done it
she's like,
yet.
okay, enter the code. And he's like, okay, here's the code. 000 whatever.
Boom, they're dead.
Boom. Yes.
Okay.
But Beale doesn't return control of the Enterprise. Instead, he puts it on a circular course and basically tries to make a deal. Hey, that mission to you guys were on to Arianis, that sounds pretty noble. You know, I'll let you go and do that. But after, will you please, pretty please take me and my criminal back to Sharon?
Kirk's like, nope, I make no deals.
No deal, Howie.
And then, so Bill, he closes his eyes and does some telepathical shit. And next thing you know, the ship is back into control and back on course to Arianis.
Then Kirk said something that, I mean, the writers had to be high, right? Because he's like, look, I could put you all in the brig for what you've done, but I won't because you're new here and you don't know our ways or whatever. But 10 minutes ago, they proved that Kirk wouldn't be able to take them into the brig.
I know, dude, you're about to blow up the ship for these guys and you don't want to put them in the brig?
Well, he can't touch them because they get all red and... 10 minutes ago, they tried to take him to the brig, and now he's like, oh, I could put you in the brig if I wanted to. No, you couldn't.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Anyway, Kirk's like, hey, you're in the United Federation of Planets territory now. We live in peace or whatever, and with full exercise of individual rights. We don't do violence anymore. That's a thing. We got over that now. We're good. And I will not tolerate it on my ship.
Bill was like, fine. He left with a security escort. But Lokai was impressed because he's like, okay, those are good words. Justice for all is what you're promising. But he still says, you know, I don't necessarily believe you.
Actions speak louder than words. Yeah. Show me that you truly believe in this justice that you speak of.
Yeah.
Lokai leaves, and Spock and Scotty have a quick back and forth. Scotty's calling these aliens disgusting. And Spock quibbles with his use of the word because that's what Spock does. And finally, Kirk has to be like, Jesus, you guys are starting to sound like those guys. Knock it the fuck off.
Right? And for some reason, this next scene, I guess it's, so we've got like Sulu and some other crewmen in the rec room, and Lokai is sort of like pleading his case to them about like what they've gone through. And no, you must think I'm just, a madman or anything like that, but I can't ever let my guard down around these people and stuff. So it was kind of like, I don't know what he was trying to convince them. And I see Spock coming to the door, and he stands outside and listens.
And why is the door cracked open on a ship with automatic doors that open and close all the time?
Just for this episode.
Of course, yeah. So Spock could listen in.
Yeah.
Basically, in this scene, he's kind of like I was trying to think of what a contemporary of this scene might be.
Martin Luther King.
Malcolm X.
Somebody who's
speaking to a crowd to really kind of get them going. And,
a social activist.
Yeah.
Anybody that's trying to make a bunch of people who probably have no stake in anything see their side of it.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, he's trying to make the argument that as Earth people who have never lived with persecution, you can't possibly understand it.
Right.
Because you haven't experienced it. And that comes back again, and I love it.
Well, Sulu did say, this happened way back in our 20th century. But there's no such primitive thinking today. But surely they got to remember what it took to get to where they are right now.
I think it made me think of and how relevant it is today. Like, my generation, we didn't live during slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Look at my kids. They didn't live in a world with segregation, or a country, I guess, not the world, the country
mm-hmm.
with segregation. And because of that, we only have a surface level understanding. And that's all we can really ever have without experiencing it ourselves in some way.
Yeah.
And how quickly, it's a generation. And then that firsthand knowledge is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to rely on the history books and
the people who are dedicated to history too. It's like one thing to teach the surface stuff in school, but you've got to find people who are dedicated to teaching the real history and scholars. There are people who that's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't evoke some sort of empathy, then somebody 100, 200 years from now will be like, hey, why don't we bring back slavery? Because
mm-hmm.
they're so disconnected from it.
Right.
That's what I'm afraid of some days.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, speaking of slavery, Lokai explains that his people were being dragged from their homes to fight a war on another planet in a battle that would only serve the oppressors and serve to get Lokai's people killed. Another deep, deep reflection of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Later, Beale is in the captain's mess with Kirk and Spock having drinks and discussing the situation. So we're treating this guy like a dignitary.
I thought it was a very interesting contrast.
Yeah.
Where the oppressed person was made to plead his case.
Yeah.
But then the other guy who is the oppressor is sitting and having bourbon or whatever
mm-hmm.
in the captain's mess.
Yep.
And sitting around and discussing and being all smug.
An equal.
Yeah.
As an equal. Yeah.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
exactly. I think great job, writers.
Right? Holy shit. Yeah, there were several times in this episode my head just went,
I know.
Oh my God.
So good.
Yeah. Beale seems to at least be acting on the side of the Starfleets, agreeing with this course of action to let Starfleet Command make the decision. And Spock's like, they might not see things your way. The dude stole a shuttle, so Starfleet may detain him and not release him back to Sharon. Hell, they might even send him to a planetarium. Man, the delay on that laugh was fucking great. We don't get that when we're not in the room together because there's a delay on Zoom or whatever.
Yeah, it's the we.
That was amazing.
Planetarium. Well, so Bill is like, well, that's not the same as murdering thousands and thousands of people. And Spock's like, well, we don't really know if he's really done that.
That's just what you said. Yeah.
Take your word for it.
Yeah. There's three sides to every story, and the only facts we have right now are that guy hot-wired our shuttle.
Right, and that's all we care about.
Yeah.
So Uhura interrupts with a call from the bridge, and she does have a communication from Starfleet Command, and she reads it out loud, because basically they had ask Starfleet about the prisoner and, how to handle it. And so she reads it. Starfleet Command extends greetings to Commissioner Beale of the planet Charon. His urgent request to be transported to his planet with the man he claims prisoner has been taken under consideration. It's pretty much permission denied.
Right. Unfortunately, the due process clause of the Federation Constitution means that we just can't let the guy go.
Right. Because he stole our property and, we care about that.
And he's in our space. We have jurisdiction.
Right.
So there's going to be a hearing at a starbase, and we'll go from there. Beale sees this as Lokai making allies, even if they don't realize they are his allies.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just going to escape again, probably kill a bunch more people. Besides, he says, Lokai is an inferior breed. Another reflection.
Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the distinction between them is finally made. And I love this because it comes across as something so pedantic and ridiculous to the Starfleets, right? Which is how hopefully today most of us see differences in skin color.
Absolutely ridiculous means absolutely nothing. So you're right.
Yeah.
I loved this.
Yes.
Absolutely.
The Starfleets are like, you're half black and half white. So is Lokai. What's the big deal? And the deal is that Beale is black on the right side. Lokai is white on the right side. Dun, dun, dun. Just like all the other of his inferior people.
And I love it.
Yeah. So Spock's like, perhaps it's time for a relevant anecdote from my people.
Yeah.
And he goes on to explain how, Vulcan went through something very similar back in the day, but it was the discipline of logic that saved them. And, and getting rid of all those cousin fucking Romulans, am I right?
Bill is kind of patronizing. He's like, yeah, you know what? Good for you. But I can't expect Lokai and his people like him to act with self-discipline. So basically they're, again, savages.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't really expect much from them. And he feels like they need to be ruled over or whatever.
Beale just simply cannot see a world where his opposite could ever change who they are. And Spock's like, Commissioner, there are 3 constants in the universe: death, taxes, and change. Speaking of change, surely your long-distant ancestors were monocolored. So they make the assumption that they had to have evolved from a prior species or whatever that was. I think
Kirk, I think he's wrong on that. And the writers or whoever, it's not really Kirk, but
right.
But I think he's wrong to assume that everything was like Earth and humans.
Yeah. In the vastness of the universe, is there a probability that a humanoid species could evolve to have half white and half? Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're interrupted by the Tannoy again. But I want to hit pause here because this whole episode has made the case so far that one of them represents white Americans and the other black. But this quick nugget we were talking about, like, perhaps what we're talking about is also people who are actually half black and half white,
mm-hmm.
right? Like, so the so-called mixed race or whatever bullshit. So are we talking about, because when he says, surely your ancestors were monocolored,
mm-hmm.
is that suggesting that a black one of them monocolored black person and a monocolored white person got together and that's why you're half and half? Are we talking about, it's meta?
Are you doing it again? God
Yes.
Damn it, Sarah.
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, it could be.
Yeah. They could be talking about both things simultaneously.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're in orbit of Arianis and begin the decontamination process. And the tag on this conversation is that Beale says he heard that some Federation people believe they're descended from apes, which in the 60s was still a very contentious view.
Yeah.
And then to put that on your TV show. And hell, a bunch of people still deny it even today.
Yeah. Creationism and all that.
But Spock has to pedantically Spock-splain, of course, because the theory isn't that we descended from apes per se.
It's actually,
well,
actually, it's the theory is that all life forms evolve from the lower levels to the more advanced. So not directly an ape, but sort of, kind of.
And I would quibble with this humanism or evolved species thing too. Like, I think like there's not such a thing as more or less evolved. Evolution it just is.
Yeah.
On the bridge, Scotty sets off the first round of decontamination and then a second.
Crop dusting. He's crop dusting from orbit.
And I read here that the original footage had the planet like changing colors, like from orange to blue to whatever, to show this change, because we joke about crop dusting, but it wasn't like the Enterprise was dropping anything.
Right.
Visually, there was nothing.
Right.
But the remastered was a whole lot more subtle. Like, so the Enterprise is orbiting around the planet, crop dusting it or whatever, and we start to see it go from like this grayish to a muted bluey greeny colors, and then finally it's like a lush earth with green greens and blue blues.
Yeah, I guess that's what bacterial infections do to a planet, is they turn it gray. Anyway.
Mission accomplished. Time to head to Starbase, and like an idiot, Kirk invites Beale to join us on the bridge.
Oh, no.
Because again, we just let anybody on the bridge, and also this guy is being treated a whole lot better than his counterpart.
So they're on the bridge. Of course, Chekhov's trying to set the program for Starbase 4 like he's supposed to. And guess what? The memory banks are burned out and they can't go anywhere. So Beale has control once again because they didn't learn their lesson.
And not only did he fuck up the navigation, he also disabled the self-destruct circuits, so we can't pull that bluff again.
Because you tell him everything, because you have him around the bridge, so you're giving up all your secrets.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the act out is Beale demonstrating this power by holding his hands over a console and lighting it up while the camera pans across Spock to Kirk to Uhura to Chekhov. And I thought this was a fun effect too. Like, rather than make sparks like they end up doing in Future Trek when a panel blows up or whatever, they took, and this had to be a super cheap approach because they just kept changing the color of the shot from red to green to whatever, like in rapid succession.
I mean, it does what it
was great.
It accomplished the missions. Yeah, it is. It's classic too.
Beale has the Enterprise careening toward Sharon again, and Lokai arrives on the bridge with a big "I fucking told you so" about Beale. He demands justice, which to him means the death of Beale. He lashes out at the Starfleets for talking the talk but not being willing to walk the walk.
Yep, and they have some words that are pretty triggering if you've lived through any sort of racism in America, especially through the 1960s and 70s. So Beale calls him, he says, "You've combed the galaxy," and comes up with nothing but monocolored trash and do-gooders and bleeding hearts. "You're dead, you half-white."
Yeah. And
he's telling that to Lokai, but Lokai comes back and says, "You're useless pieces of bland flesh." And he says, "I'll take you with me, you half-black."
Yeah.
And that was, I guess, like, to drive home that, like, words hurt, especially when you've lived with that kind of bigotry all your life. That shit hurts. And I think they did a good job of driving it home.
Yeah. And again, it's like, it's impressive that this was on television in the 60s. In any kind of way, but especially in this, like, very direct, they're not hiding it anymore kind of way.
Was this one of the episodes that the UK
did
not air?
I don't. It might have been.
I'm curious. I mean, I know they didn't have the same issues that we had in the 60s, but I'm just curious that if this was considered a sensitive subject in the UK. We'll check back.
So the shit talking escalates into Beale and Lokai locked in battle, all glowy red, trying to kill each other. So Kirk tries a hero speech. "Listen, Beale, you're never going to get to Sharon with your prisoner, and you're going to destroy each other, the ship, and everything. 50,000 years of chasing him wasted." And then he gets the dubious honor of speaking a version of this week's episode title. He says, "This will be your last battlefield." The fighting stops, and Kirk turns his hero speech to Lokai. "And you'll die here in space. You'll inspire no more disciples. Your cause will be ended." Well, it turns out it's all for naught anyway, because as Beale releases control of the Enterprise again, They do some scans and find that the whole planet is one of those episodes of that show where they imagine what might happen on Earth if all the humans disappeared. Not like the opposite of Left Behind or whatever. What were those called? Where it was like
apocalyptic.
Yeah.
Post-apocalyptic
right. Yeah.
Earth After Us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they bring Sharon on screen, and it's a planet still, but it's like a smoldering planet that probably used to be thriving, but it's now just like a war zone.
Spock says several large cities uninhabited, extensive traffic systems, but no traffic, lower animals and vegetation encroaching on the cities, no sapient life forms registering at all. There's no evidence of natural disaster, and yet there are vast numbers of unburied corpses in all of the cities. The two sides annihilated each other.
Yeah. Everybody's dead. Nobody's alive. I mean, I found it hard to believe that those two are 50,000 years old, but apparently they are. Because he said he'd been chasing him through.
Oh, right. For 50,000 Earth years. Yeah.
So you didn't check back with your home planet to say,
ET phone home.
Hey, how's it going? No. So they've been chasing each other through the galaxy. Meanwhile, that hate has basically destroyed their planet. So what's the point?
And of course, they blame each other.
Of course.
And they go back to glow fighting. And Kirk goes back to hero speeching. He's like, look, your planet is dead because of this hate. Like, you have to give up this hate. You have to let this go, or you're going to end up just like them.
Then he says, you're welcome to live with us. What?
What?
No. Get away.
He figures he brought up Charlie X pretty good. He can handle these guys.
That'd be a disaster.
God.
But yeah, he's still trying to get them to stop fighting. But Lokai leaves, runs out, and Kirk's like, stop. And then Bill goes after him. And the last few minutes of the episode are them running through the hallways. And then they overlay that with like images of burning, building, and destruction.
No sense alerting security. Where can they go anyway? Mm-hmm. They should have at least alerted that science guy that got like full body checked when Beale came ripping out of the turbo lift. Fucking full body checked.
Like, is he okay?
Like tackled him, football tackle. Yeah. Spock's tracking them through the ship as they fade in and out on these burned out buildings or whatever. And this dragged on. This was another one of those scenes that they could have wrapped up a little quicker.
I did read that they had run out of stuff, and so they had they literally did have to make this longer, and they did, and that's why they did it, because they had run out of things to make their length of. Yeah.
So these two dudes they're like tired chasing each other through the ship. They're like, this reminded me of like me having to run a mile around the track at school.
I'm dying.
Just like, oh God. I smoke at 15 and I'm out of shape. And why are you making me do this? That's what they look like. Lokai slips into the transporter room and somehow knows how to operate it again.
It's telepathic, I guess.
Well, he actually goes over and switches the switches.
Which he shouldn't have to do because he's telepathic.
But this makes the case again that you can set the controls to delay and then run up on the pad, which is an upgrade from how it started.
Hey, this is season 3, so.
Right. The transporter activates again, and Beale transports down to Sharon. The end of the episode sees our crew warping away, leaving them to their hate to kill each other as their people had done.
Kirk's like, fuck those guys. We're out of here.
Get the fuck out of here. Yeah. Condemned to finish each other with their hate.
Boy, I'm sure glad that's over with.
I'm happy the affair is over.
Me too.
A most annoying, emotional episode.
Yeah, but you know, I learned something today.
When dreams become more important than reality, you give up travel, building, creating.
One jealous god, if all this makes a god.
By sparing your helpless enemy, who surely would have destroyed you, you demonstrated the advanced trait of mercy.
Frankly, I was rather dismayed by your use of the term half-breed. You must admit, it is an unsophisticated expression.
Well, I guess it's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
But again, when we talked about, I loved how there was this ridiculous notion that someone who's black on the left side and then someone else who's black on the right side, it's ridiculous.
Yes.
And how can you judge someone based on just that is ridiculous.
And the way that the Starfleets played it, as like hearing it and visually we saw them going, oh, that is the dumbest fucking reason I've ever heard.
And hopefully it made someone look at their own bigotry and say, okay,
maybe I'm being a little ridiculous.
Yeah. Does your shit make sense?
Yeah.
Does your bigotry make sense?
So there was that element of like, hey, white folks, imagine that you're in post-slavery segregated Jim Crow, American South or whatever. And black folks are pleading for their lives, for equality, for freedom. And like, maybe you have a boat or something that travels between the North and South on a shipping route or something. And you're in the position, right? Lokai's begging to be taken to the North. What do you do?
Yeah.
What do you do?
Do you say, I'm sorry, we don't have any jurisdiction here, you're on your own? Or do you help them? Do you pick? Because I know Kirk said we don't choose sides, but sometimes I think you need to fucking pick a side.
And then Beale, who's like the fucking predecessor to modern day police, all this criminal's mind turning back over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, too, you know how we always say today, we're like, those who do nothing are just as complicit.
Yeah.
You know, when you're standing by and watching genocide and stuff like that, and you say, and you absolutely, oh, we don't want to get involved. And I don't know. I think it's tough because you do have a whole country to think about, like the leaders have. But at the same time, it's really tough when people are begging for help and we need somebody to do something because the people fighting back, the oppressed, cannot. They can never win on their own because the oppressors usually have more everything, more resources, the power.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I really liked the bit about the Earth people not understanding the true plight of the oppressed, since these Earthmen lived in a world without oppression, and the history books can't possibly fill in the gap, as well as having lived experience. It makes us rethink like what we think we understand.
Yeah.
What we think we know about history, especially since we know that history is written by the victor.
Always.
Often, right. And it's not just the facts, ma'am. Otherwise, we wouldn't have all been taught that the settlers and Indians bullshit.
Yeah. Well, they're friends. They had lunch. They did lunch and everything was great.
Everything was fine.
Yeah. And now we're this whole movement of critical race theory and the truth, and let's teach the kids the truth.
Yep.
And they don't like that at all.
No.
They meaning the victors.
And that's why they're pushing for all of this. Don't put it in the history books.
Yeah.
We don't want anybody to know what really happened.
And they say, well, we don't want you to like keep focusing on this negative stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean the truth?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a great episode.
I agree.
It's one of those, like, I think that
there's so much that we could talk about this for another hour.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right. Well, did anyone die in this episode?
Maybe.
I don't remember. Did
so? Well, when they both were beamed down to the planet, we could assume that they probably died. But I like to remain a little hopeful, even though it's probably no use. But I did write something just to kind of honor the plight of Lokai, I guess. Because we really don't know for sure. So did anyone die? Undetermined.
Right.
It's dead, Jim.
We are assembled here today to pay final respects to our honored dead.
Lokai, white on the right, black on the left. He was to stand trial at Starfleet because of his theft. Beale, white on the left, black on the right. He inserted himself on the Enterprise, ready to fight. Now, I admit I was empathetic to Lokai's mission. Being black in America solidified my position. But leave it to Star Trek to make us all see how ridiculously destructive hate can be. In the end, they both beamed down to the planet Charon, please don't let hate be the hill that you both die on.
Oh, I love that.
Well, hopefully it worked out.
That was great, yes.
But it probably didn't.
But it probably didn't.
Let's get right to business.
Fine, I'm authorized to pay an equitable price. Federation has invested a great deal of money in our training. They're about due for a small return.
Listen, we pay off percentages. We're entitled to a little service for our money, huh?
Is this the way your citizens do business? Their right of petition?
They pay their percentages and the boss takes care of them.
Is there anything else?
Listeners of Humanist Trek at Tanagra, the podcast, it's humor in laughter. Dathon on the Patreon Sea.
Shaka, when the reviews fell. Kahlo, his pledge at Patreon.
Humanist Trek, their content wide. Darmok and Jalad at Patreon. Pledge with arms wide.
Mirab, with your support, your laughter, Temba, his arms open.
Our admirals at Patreon. Russell at the Race of Natara. Ali, her arms with fists open. Peter and Sarah at Lunga. Sherry with sails unfurled.
Patreon.com/humanisttrek, where laughter flows. So Koth, in joyous unity.
I assume you're loitering around here to learn what efficiency rating I plan to give your cadets.
Trainees, to the briefing room. Is that all you gotta say? What about my performance?
Aren't you dead?
I don't believe this was a fair test of my command abilities. There was no way to win.
There's no correct resolution. It's a test of character.
Now, what is that supposed to mean?
I am understandably curious.
May I ask you a question?
Who's been holding up the damn elevator?
All right, Beck is back now with the answer to this week's Starfleet Academy Cadet Challenge for Let That Be Your Last Battlefield. Remind us again what the question was.
Why is Beale's ship invisible?
I believe we agreed that this was a budget decision, so they didn't have to design a ship.
And yes.
Correct.
This decision was made due to hefty budget cuts.
Yay! And I can see that now just based on like some of the reuse of the footage.
Uh-huh.
And then that whole ending scene with them running through the hallway.
Yes.
They didn't have anything else to put there, so they threw that in.
Right on. Well, we got one right.
Sweet.
All right, next week, we'll be reviewing Star Trek The Original Series, Season 3, Episode 16, The Mark of Gideon. Just very fucking biblical sounding. Kirk is abducted by aliens who wish to use him to help solve their overpopulation problem. Kirk typically gets called in to solve underpopulation problems, doesn't he?
I know.
It's always an alien lady that wants to fuck him.
His dick is real busy. His dick is busy.
Do you remember anything about this?
It sounds familiar, and I want to...
it doesn't sound familiar at all to me. I don't know. What's our question for the Mark of Gideon?
In this episode, we see shots of an empty corridor and an empty sick bay.
Yeah.
These shots are recycled.
God damn it.
What episode did we see these shots in originally?
I'm going to say empty. This feels like...
Empty.
Fuck. What's the one where...
Not the one that we just did a few weeks ago.
No. The one with the Medusan. Because they had to clear the hallways. That could be. It could be that one. That wasn't the one I was thinking of initially, though. The one I was thinking of initially was where they beamed over to a sister ship, the Defiant or the Constellation or the Constitution or whatever, and nobody was there. And it was just, reused Enterprise sets with the lights turned off.
And that's what I was thinking was the one that we just did a few episodes ago where it was the Defiant, but I don't know.
What episode was that?
Actually, the Defiant was not empty. Like the sickbay wasn't empty.
Oh, that's right, because they had naked timed themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, shit. Okay.
Maybe the Constellation. Was it the Constellation
the Medusan one is the only other one that I can think of that it could be.
Clear the hallways.
Yeah.
We're bringing the box through. I don't know.
Yeah. Is there in beauty?
Truth, no beauty.
Is there in beauty? Yeah. That's the best I got. Is there in truth no beauty? That's my answer.
Is it just one episode?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I'll concur.
All right. Well, we've locked in our answers. If you want to play along at home, head to your nearest social media, share this episode, use the hashtag Starfleet Challenge, and we will pick out a winner. Next time on Humanist Trek, Star Trek, the original series, Season 3, Episode 16, The Mark of Gideon.
Live long and prosper.
Kapla!
Humanist Trek is available wherever you replicate your podcasts. Follow us on all the social medias at Humanist Trek. Become a patron at patreon.com/humanisttrek. Open hailing frequencies to podcast@humanisttrek.com and visit our website, humanisttrek.com. Humanist Trek is a production of Sarah Austin Media.